he is currently managing director of Alfred Housing Society, the International Forum of Deutsche Bank, and he was former, Director General for political analysis and planning, the German Federal Chancellery, during the Chancellor Schroeder. He has been to North Korea several times under the auspices of the European Union, and recently, last week, he visited North Korea. We have Honorable Chumie, first member of the National Assembly.
I know her.
I don't know for what reason, but Wolfgang has been visiting North Korea quite some time, and particularly with Glenn Ford, another British fellow who was a member of the European Parliament, and Wolfgang has been visiting North Korea, and he has been giving us very updated information in North Korea. And next to Wolfgang is Timo. Timo works in a German Asia Pacific Business Association. He's board member there, and he led a delegation of how many? 20?
Yeah.
20 German businessmen to North Korea. It's the first time, and North Korea really welcomed the German business delegation. Okay. And even, his association signed the memorandum of understanding with North Korea. So therefore, it's quite interesting. And Wolfgang will be giving a talk on recent development in North Korea. Okay, and he will give about 30 to 40 minute talks, and that will be followed by 5 to 10 minutes with an update from Timo, from particular business point of view, and particularly, Timo will be giving very interesting update on what North Korea wants from Germany, okay, particularly from business point of view. Okay, and also apart from that, then let me give one more announcement. This week and next week we'll be having several seminar programs. On Wednesday we'll be featuring Vinod Agarwal, professor at the University of California, Berkeley. He's the world authority on trade arrangements. He's director of APEC Center at the UC Berkeley. If you have a time, and if you wanted to update yourself on the growing, competition between TPP and RCEP, his seminar will be most valuable. Therefore, you are more than welcome. And next Monday, we'll be featuring another very interesting figure. He's a key figure for setting up the Sasakawa Peace Foundation Washington office. He was a former, Senate staff for more than 15 years. His name is Dan Bob. He's one of the Washington insider for the Japanese government. And then he'll be giving very interesting luncheon talk. And what has been the pattern of diplomatic competition, or public diplomacy competition between Japan and South Korea, and how Japan has been winning over South Korea. And he will be able to provide a very inside view on that one. And he's a very diplomatic guy, but very, very well informed and very articulate person. Therefore, Monday next week, I won't be there because I have another, appointment. But former Foreign Minister Kim Sung-hwan will be moderating the session. Therefore, it will be more interesting than I would do it. Okay. And also one more. I understand there are some press people here. The Wolfgang one, Chatham House rule. You never cite his name. It is okay for you to report on the contents about of his seminar, but you are not allowed to quote his name. Okay, you all know that is the way how you deal with North Korea. With this introduction, okay, let us give a big applause to Wolfgang Nowak.
Thank you very much. I have been last week again in North Korea and had the opportunity during long journeys to different places to talk with the party and to get answers and to get new questions and to discuss it. When I came for the first time in this country, it was in 2012 in spring, and Parnuda, Glenn Ford and Jonathan Powell, we were part of a delegation who had been invited by the late Kim Jong-il and came later because he got his death. And when we asked our North Korean colleagues about the future and what would happen with the new developments, there was a standard answer, of course, and then came the answer, everything will be done, and it has been written in the books and papers by the late Kim Il-sung and by the late Kim Jong-il, and we will not change a word and we will not do anything else. Everything, the future is buried or is already there in the papers of these two great North Korean and venerated leaders. We asked many times that a new leader in North Korea, a new leader in the United States, there might be a chance of change. And always was said, change, and everything is written. It was a country which had the future already planned, buried in the past. If you come today, last week, to Pyongyang and to the country, you see a completely different country. The country has changed dramatically. Not only are there more cars, and most of the people, nearly all people, have their cell phone on their ears or are writing emails during the talks. Weekly open new restaurants. They have recently opened a fancy restaurant where the young leader was, a big Hollywood-style restaurant where you can eat whole porks, or little porks, but you can eat them there. You have a terrific beer restaurant which if you would open this in Berlin or another town, you would immediately have a big success. They have 7 different beers they sell, produced in North Korea. You have shops. People in 2012, most of the people had uniforms. Now, not many people have uniforms. They're better dressed. The wife of the young leader is a sort of fashion icon. When she has something new, the girls try to have it as well. You have hairdressers when you can choose among 15 different cuts. And it's changing the country. Interesting is the iconography. When they had their 70th birthday, you remember the big military parade, all these tanks, guns and machines. They have made a movie of it, and they show regularly in all restaurants and all places. They show a movie. Last time they showed, 2 months ago, they showed these singers where they are now famous all over the world. They were singing before an audience of soldiers, and it was really funny when you saw the stage and they were dancing and for the rhythm, and everybody saw that the audience would go mad. You saw a lot of uniformed guys all sat there. It was really fun. Today they show a big video of the 70th birthday in all public places, in all restaurants, and you see no soldiers, no arms, no tanks, no military parade. The military parade, who was very visible during the festival, is not visible on the public screens. And the screens are in all restaurants, in all public places, in our hotel, in 2 rooms, and I think I can tell you the movie already backwards. They present it all the time, and people are sitting in little villages looking at this movie, having a picnic and sitting there like in a cinema and see the show, dancing, singing. It's a sort of huge rock concert, yes? And people are really thrilled to see this, but no military on these. This is very important to see military. The next important thing is the young leader. In 2012 the young leader was nearly invisible, and slowly he's becoming more visible in the public places. The last visibility he got in the mausoleum where the 2 presidents are lying. When I was last year there, and last year I've been twice in this country, and once I was alone, had a long time to travel all around and talk to the party and others. He was not visible in the Holy Grail, but when you come now, you will see the grave, and if you are on the grave, you go a long line, you see the life of the first leader, then you go the other line, you see the life of the second leader, but at the end, you see the 3 leaders with the young man. For the first time, he is visible in the place of holy veneration. And another visibility is quite more important. Close to Pyongyang is a sort of farm, a farm which has been founded and visited many times by Kim Il-sung, and they produce really great tomatoes, and it's a farm, really a dream for North Korea, and then it's of course a special farm. There are also paintings and painting. There's paintings of Kim Il-sung, and there is no painting at all of Kim Jong-il, and there's a painting, of course, of Kim Jong-un. When Mr. Kang, who is the Secretary General of the work of the Foreign Policy Department of the Workers' Party, and the member of the Politburo, and quite important, quite influential.
You're talking Kang Seok-ju.
Yeah, Kang Seok-ju, sorry, German. Kang Il came to Germany. It was astonishing. He was invited by his colleague from the Social Democratic Party. It was the only way to get him in, because of the sanctions, he cannot see the government. He had a group of people around him, and I was very astonished. It was not people who are, when they're young, they're 70. They're in their young 70s, they were in their late 28s and the early 30s. He was surrounded with, and let me say, brilliant young persons who have studied in Rome, in Cambridge, who have studied in France, who speak different foreign languages, who speak fluent German. These people have seen the world, who are with him. It's quite unusual in this country to see when you talk to the leaders. I'm 72, when I feel very young when I'm talking to them, and I'm feeling like a young man when I talk to them, and all that shit all there. And it is completely new to have this new generation of people there. Last summer when I was there, again, with Mr. Kang was surrounded by young persons, and he had only two hardcore, let me say, representative of the past with him, but all the others were young. And when I met another high-ranking person 3 days ago, he had one of the young Kang people with him. This is interesting, because it's new, and for the first time this time, these young people, and they have been with the delegation of Mr. Prekop all the time, there is a word, and it's spokenly, of generation change. And if you talk with them, they are not talking about the past. Even when you tell them, if they have a German delegation coming, and it would not be very bright to tell them that the Americans are all devils, that the South Koreans are the assistant of the devils, and it would be useless to say this, because it doesn't convince anybody. They agree. And even if they agree, and the places are full of micros, they agree, and they didn't talk about the devils when we were there. We had wonderful talks with them. They're the changing of generation. This is, I think, for me, the most thrilling impression I had. I expected it already in 2012, and there was nothing. This was the rule of the people from 70 to 88. But now this generation is still too young to have responsibilities. They're on a way to their responsibilities. And let me now be a little bit, Germans are all philosophers. Let me make some philosophy. Let me talk about philosophy a little bit. When you look at the past, every one of us has a number of experiences. And when we talk about the future, our expectations are based on these experiences. The problem is when, for instance, the two countries, South and North Korea, talk together, they have different experiences and, of course, different expectations. In North Korea, it has been even worse. The experiences have been changed permanently. The museums change. The big pictures in the museum change. And then the experiences the parents had, suddenly they find out that these experiences are not true any longer. That they have to learn that they had other experiences because they couldn't connect with the new expectations. This is very important, and this generation their experience is of course the past, but it also it's Rome, it's London, it's Cambridge, it's Paris. It are different cities where they are. Therefore, they have a sort of experiences that will not get together with the experience they learn at school. They should have. This might be a problem in this country. And therefore, I think inside North Korea, there is a sort of clash of pasts. Of the past the young are describing, and this past they learn at school. There's a sort of clash of pasts. It's also visible if you go outside and see the Japanese Prime Minister coming. It is a clash of the Japanese past and of the past of your country. It's just visible over the street there. You have a clash of past. I think this is, as these experience and the past are shaping our thinking, this new generation has had a terrific education. They have learned all the politically correct experiences, but nevertheless they have their own, and they don't hide them. Second point, if you look of your country, you also have experiences, and you also have different expectations. But your expectations are much closer to experiences. The experiences of the young people in North Korea, and if you see the expectations, and the expectations are directed into the modern world, this will be not the world they can explain with their experiences. And when experiences and expectations come together with a world which is completely different from them, you are talking about a crisis. I'm not talking about the crisis of this country, but the older ones feel that something is going on there. But they talk about the generational change. I would, if you, they are no longer, I think, the past is able to shape the vision of the future of the younger generation. The younger generation doesn't dream of a united Korea, sorry to say so. They dream of a country where they can send their children to foreign universities, where they can live, where they can see the world. The dreams of the younger generation are also visible in this country. If you go to, we spoke last time, but if you go to a very new fancy restaurants, this is a hamburger restaurant by Singapore. This is quite an experience, a Singaporean hamburger restaurant. And these hamburger restaurants are very, very popular among young people. And I asked them whether they can go there, not every day because it's expensive. The French fries, by the way, are very good. The hamburger, I have some doubts whether this is, I didn't eat it. But they are sitting there with their girlfriends, their families, and there's also a screen there. What's to see on this screen? On this screen you can see the dreams of the young generation. It is German romantic piano music. I'm very happy for them, but because I heard them and turned around, and you see movies showing Paris, showing Venice, something unheard before. You won't see these movies in public places, but you go to a restaurant, not all restaurants, but to the hamburger places, in the beer hall you see the big party festival, of course. But you can see romantic German music and you see Paris. Well, you don't show these pictures to them to say you will never go there, because they live the devils. They see this. It's also, if you go to the shops, you see more modern elements. It is all signs of a change. When I discuss this in a car with my colleague, so I have to, with my colleague from the party. And he admitted it, and he said, "Well, I'm too old it's too difficult for me to change all this. It's really hard work." They are eager to, part of them, I think a group in the party, and I think this is also of comfort too, to send more of the young generation into foreign countries, to compare and to see. And Mr. Prekop has offered them that they could participate in the Young Leaders program of German Business School, and I will go back and will try to get also to enable some of them to come to Germany to see more. Again, who are these young people? Most of them have been the children of ambassadors, of course. This is, but not all of them. And another change. When I was in the car, and I can't talk to you about this, but I haven't talked about it. It's very important who is the interpreter. Most of the time, the interpreter, if he is very good, belongs to the Secret Service. This is no doubt. And if the higher up on the Secret Service guy is a very high-ranking interpreter. I had an interpreter in the car where we really were discussing tough questions. Who was part of the family of Mr. Khan? who was not as good as the Secret Service interpreter. Never, but we were alone in the car, and he was the one who made the protocol, and they sent him the notes. The next day they asked new questions, and so on. Therefore, in the car I was always, when we were sleeping, I was working with him. It's also interesting that they have something to say now. But if you look at this country, and the past is still there, the graves, the photograph, and if you go out of the country, it's depressing, and you take the train. The last illuminated picture you see are the two leaders, and then it's darkness. And suddenly the light is there, China. In most of the books of North Korea have the leitmotif which is called no exit. And may I quote Mr. Kang in here? Not the Chinese quote. Mr. Kang. Mr. Kang, when we talked to him, he said we need things who build trust building policy. And when he was talking, he was not. There was no all these ornaments of how evil you are and how evil your country is, and you can talk to the country. He agrees that there is no way to talk. I know that there are secret channels to your country. Sorry, I know this, but I don't know what they are talking. But he said, and now I quote him: we need instruments for a better cooperation in security questions. Of course, then he said that they felt threatened by the regime change policy of the US, but he's in need of these sort of a channel where you can talk about this. The Chinese, at the same time, I met the new ambassador who is responsible for North Korea of China. They have exchanged them. He is a man who is completely open to them. He is full of understanding. He also said that there is a need for talks, but he agrees that there is, as we discussed, there is no exit of this, of to come together. Again, when I talked with one of the young leaders I saw there, and I can speak French, and I told them that really I'm very glad that we didn't talk about who was right in 1952, who was wrong in 1966, and so on. He said, "There's no question. Don't understand us. Interesting us." It is really. This young generation is still in the hands of understanding old persons, and it's still looking for a way how to shape the future of the country. They all look at the young leader, who is their symbol. I was last year at a big one of these big meetings, and I was in the audience. And if you look at the stage, you saw people from, it's admirable, it's people from 70 to maybe in the late 90s sitting there all on the stage. And the only person who was completely strange to them was the young leader. He sat there with like a stranger. At this time he couldn't walk because he had a car accident. And then the speech was given by the party Secretary General, I think 86. And when I saw him there, his loneliness was really impressive. He is not in charge, but the loneliness of him, on the other hand, he's a symbol of change. And last time when we had a dinner in the evening, I made a dinner speech and said that we, the group, will all want also to talk not only to the old ones, but to those who can be made responsible in 20 years what they are doing today. I got applause and not doubts. And when I came back this time, 2 participants came to me again and talked to me about this speech. Again, the expectations and the experience are breaking apart. The expectations are not in unification, are not to become a capitalist democracy. I don't know what democracy is. But they come into a sort of a better life. And the big ship in the big restaurant you see in the city is for them the symbol that the better life is beginning. And they urged us to have dinner there, and we invited him there, and the restaurant is not, let me say, a taste of your country, but it's for them, it's a sort of a dreamboat. But if you look if you look a little bit away from this country, and you look at the US, you look at China, at Japan, or look at the three countries we are meeting today here. What is the vision of a future for your country? What is the vision of a future for Japan? And what is China's vision of the future? These are different futures. China has a completely different vision of the future than your country. Japan probably has another one, and you have another one. You are living in a sort of clash of futures, where you have the clash of past in North Korea. You have a sort of clash of different vision of the future. If you add North Korea, you have also another future which is very cloudy. This is, I think, in a way, this is not a very good situation. How are the different forces in the country balanced? 2 months ago, there was a sort of standstill. In preparation of the 20th of October, there were two forces, the military and the party, and there was a sort of balance of power. You didn't know who was winning. And we were talking about the possibility of a nuclear test as a wonderful firework for the party congress. But you see, there was no firework, not even a rocket. There was only a Chinese guest at the conference. This is a good sign. Second, what North Korea knows, and what you know as well, your army is far better and far better developed and much more high-tech than North Korea. The difference between helicopters who fly automatically, between produced in this country, between the new weapons you have, and the difference between the well-kept and they look great because they sound familiar. You can see these tanks for 50 years. They're tanks they have. The gap is becoming larger and larger. Well, the military, of course, is also seeing this. But now we have another problem in the country. The reformers say, well, you don't need new fancy weapons. You have the nuclear weapons. The army doesn't have been stronger than the army in North Korea because you have the nuclear weapons. This time, the nuclear weapons, and every year you get a new explanation for the nuclear weapons in this country. This time the explanation is the nuclear weapons is good for our economy because we don't have to spend so much money for new tanks. We can spend it for the economy. 2 years ago it was nuclear weapons show to all the world how developed the country is, that they could make business with us, but because we can produce nuclear weapons. And the first time it was that the American devils should come and then they would be crushed. Today the argument is, well, the military have nuclear weapons, should be pleased, nobody dares to attack them, and now we can turn money to the economy. This is a conflict, and I think that the conflict is not over, but it's a little bit more over than we thought. Well, but what policy for the future? And this is, well, it's not for a foreign guest to tell you something about the future of an area which is completely difficult to understand and difficult to read. Let me try. Well, the answer to all this is no exit, yes? This is a very dangerous answer. The answer, you have a crisis not a crisis in North Korea. You had a shaky, not stable government some 2 months ago there. And I hope maybe they're more stable now. What is the future? The future is not what you can read in all the books here, a collapse of North Korea. This has been a dream for 50 years, and in the West we have a dream that China may collapse. This is a collapsistic view of the world. There will be no collapse, and China will never let it happen. Whatever happened in the other country, China will come and create stable, if you like, with force, stable conditions. And they will not take the North and give you the East. China is not interested. China is interested that this country remains stable to prevent the Americans to come in and to go close to the border. China's interest is a non-nuclear Korea and no Americans in Korea. Never, don't believe in any collapse that will bring a new world to here and a unification and so on. I don't think so. Of course, the country is, if you see some part of the country, it's depressing to see this. You see factories, and we have seen them, who look like factories in the early 18th and 19th century, with no workers, and the sanctions are really very heavy on these threatening the success of these factories. But you see thousands of new Chinese trucks transporting all the goods. Therefore, you see Maybach Mercedes cars in Pyongyang. You see Audis. You see all the fancy cars from your country. All the SUVs in the streets. It's not what sanctions you want to have. You can in Italian restaurants you can get the best wine from Italy, good pizzas. What kind of sanctions? Therefore, the sanctions is not will not bring the country to a collapse. The Russians are bringing goods in. The Chinese are bringing goods in. The Indians are bringing goods in. The next one is hunger. Well, they have made mistakes because they have now planting corn like maniacs. And the country is a corn country. It's now a corn civilization. But also they have their private business in the countryside is visible. People have their own produce their own eggs, produce their own goods. People are on the streets selling apples or fruits or fresh eggs. Therefore, the countryside, even this year, they had not enough water, and they have a problem with water and, of course, with energy. This will not come to a collapse. Of course, there's the problem of electricity. We have seen one power plant. It's interesting, the power plant is from, most of the parts come from Stalingrad. For Germans, it's fun to see all the big signs, Stalingrad, all of it. It looks really like a museum, but an expert from Siemens told us it's working quite good. They are able to bring it again to work, and it has only lost 15% of their capacity to produce electricity. This is for a museum power plant. It's quite a lot. It's frightening to see this, but it works. And they have the collapse. The problem. The other thing is you see always the future. You see these resorts for ski. You see skating areas. You see these fun bars all over the country. I think it's a new fashion to have high towers and jump into the water. It's something new, because they feel that the young want to see the world, and as the world is not possible to visit, they bring the world into the country. You have these fun, you have hotels, you have to try to offer this. I don't think that any belief in a collapse is a reasonable way to think about the future of this country. What to do? There is I think we have people from the Naumann Stiftung, and I will know who John Stuart Mill is. There is a saying of John Stuart Mill that if society needs to rebuild, the worst thing you can do is to do it on the old plan. And I think if you want to start a new policy with North Korea, the worst thing is to do it on the old plan. We need a new plan. The new Chinese plan, not yet published, is 6-party talks or prep talks. No, the Chinese plan is after 70 years after the war, you have to start real peace talks. You start a process of peace talks. The only condition, and the word precondition is the leitmotif of North Korean and South Korean policy, the only precondition for peace talk is the armistice. You have it. And then you start a process a long way. At the end, and this is China, this is Germany, this is a whole civilized country, at the end there are no nuclear weapons. The peace talk can start a process of developing, to come together, bringing together Japan, your country, Japan, the North Korean, the American, and so on, bring it on the table and have different groups and create a roadmap and start peace talk. I think this is what the Chinese, well, it was officially what I was invited, and we discussed it, and it was interesting to see this is the peace talk. This is a grand design. To come to the grand design, of course, there is a policy I will call the policy of little steps, Politik der kleinen Schritte. This is the German word. Of little steps would be in the journal where the Moon is publishing. There was a wonderful article in the last edition about I love kimchi, and I come from a sauerkraut country, as you know, probably quite natural. That you could produce your kimchi in this house. You have in the north. You have to invent little islands of the Chinese would say communities of interest, and it's all over. And you could start, I think, a policy of little without any precondition and not forcing them to lose their faces before and whatever, of cooperation. It will be possible because the old generation is going. And invest, please, invest not in the past, invest not in past differences, invest in the new generations. And therefore create little islands of understanding where you can work together, where you can help them. They need help, of course, this is no doubt, where you can offer something for them. And maybe you could, I've seen Kaesong, it's an island. You should see maybe other islands of cooperation. The kimchi idea is brilliant. And to have other work, to work together with them. Make them, show them that you are not afraid of them, and show them that you respect them and don't look down to them, look them in the eye. They know that they are not as powerful as you are. They know that they're inferior. But I think a country with an inferior complex like Russia and these countries can become very dangerous. Don't treat them like this. And start a policy of little steps. The big step will be the peace talks. Second, to the little steps belong that you stop the folklore, the maneuvers. I know that I have talked about last time with the Ministry of Unification, with the Foreign Office, and with the Blue House. These maneuvers is for them, they feel threatened. In their military strategy, a maneuver is a movement which can develop into an attack. They've learned it in Russia, and the army believes in this theory. They think a maneuver is a very dangerous situation. And they need the people to work in the countryside to help to plan something and to do something. If this is possible, you can even tell them you stop the maneuvers and they should declare that they would make no nuclear tests forever. But these maneuvers every year, the party does everything to calm the nerves of the military, and the military wants to use the maneuvers to show we are necessary, we need more money, we have to be there, they are dangerous. I think a maneuver is helping in North Korea, not that the future that we have a better future. It helps that the military keep think that they are as important as they have ever been. This is, I think it's a sort of traditional folklore, these maneuvers. You can have military maneuvers, but not from both sides. Difficult. And now comes, as old people as I have always a sad outlook. The Americans and have a terrific study in who's interested. The last question is, who's interested in an aggressive North Korea? The Americans have started a study which is called the Thucydides trap. Have you heard of it? Yeah? You know about this. This is the idea of the Greek historian Thucydides. He said, if there's a big power and a rising power is coming up, this inevitably is the reason of war. They have made.
그 펠로폰네소스 전쟁 살 얘기하면서 그라함 알리슨이라고 하는 하버드 대학 교수가 뉴욕 타임스나 아리클에 2010년에 튜키디데스의 트랩이라고 하는 표현을 썼어요. 그래서 아테네하고 스파르타의 비유를 미국 고고출처럼 이렇게 얘기해 준 I just interpret.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not now to bring you a European way of thinking. That's the idea of Thucydides has found out, and they have made 16 case studies where old power is confronted with a rising power. In 12 cases, this has been the reason of war. And if you're interested, I can give you the link, and you can read it there. It's quite interesting. I'm not believe that you can learn something from history, but it's interesting if the 12 cases are quite convincing. There are also cases where there is no war. And reading the Thukydides trap, this is happening between China and the US. This is the reason why they are making the study, to find out whether this would inevitably lead to a war. If you look at China, wherever they find a goldfish in the water, they think this is a Chinese island, and they prepare their borders, they push their borders into the sea. And China is developing new weapons which will be in nowadays, but in a few years, this will be the end of aircraft carriers. Well, America, if they continue, they need aircraft carriers. And there are three wonderful aircraft carriers: Japan, South Korea, and Okinawa, and if you like, Taiwan. These are terrific aircraft carriers for the Americans. The question is, will the Americans interfere if you are attacked? This is another question, but therefore, but to use your country as an aircraft carrier, they need an aggressive North Korea. And it's very easy to make North Korea aggressive, to start a big maneuver. Yeah? This is very easy, or you send Bibles with balloons to the country. It's not as expensive, but they also jump. Therefore, there is a strategic interest, and China is part of it, that you need an aggressive North Korea to have a very strong superpower here in the country with a very powerful ally. Therefore, although I would hope that the big solution, which at the end of the little steps could be realized, but I see that they are difficult. I'm not naive. As this is a problem I really see. My last remark, and then it's open for discussions, is there are doubts whether you need. Well, what can you do to make North Korea less aggressive, even if you have maneuvers and so on? This is a politic of little steps, and this is a politic of little steps of the Europeans. And Timo, who is with me here, we have started, after the visit of Mr. Kang Kwok-ju in Germany, a sort of policy of little steps to improve their economic situation. I think the better they live, the less they can convince to give all this up for some aggressive ideas. The Europeans, I think, will start in Germany, is beginning to have a policy of very little steps, helping them to grow economically and to make them to build a very way into the future. There are faint positive traces of the future in North Korea. I think what we are doing here, we are not naive, is to make this a way into the future. But I still know it's a long way to go. But if you join, or start also a policy of little steps. If the Japanese start a policy of little steps, we can have one day a less aggressive and a more open North Korea. And the more people are able to see the world, the more people will not be ready to defend a world which is sort of an island in there. But this is I know this is a skeptic optimism I have. But Timo is here to can explain to you the first of the little steps, and maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think little steps, and then maybe the grand design of the peace talks could help. Although I know that due to the Chinese policy of expansion, the Americans need a strong basis in this part of the world, and of course your country is one of them. Thank you very much.
Timo, would you just give some brief outline of your delegation's work?
Yeah, basically, Paul, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hosting us. What happened is I was visiting North Korea in August, and so like to pre-screen what is news and all that. I mean, obviously, wherever you go, whatever you do, wherever you turn, you see a necessity for all sorts of things. Infrastructure is poor, obviously. Great demand in the field of agriculture. Production capacities are poor and everything. So what we identified a couple of areas which are most needed. It's like infrastructure, agriculture, any sort of production, consumer goods, banking and finance, of course, and such. So when I got back to Germany, we were trying our utmost to put a decent business delegation together, which was then about 20 business representatives, true business people, and no sort of like political foundations or parliamentarians or so. Pure business delegation, because we really wanted to enter into discussions with North Korea and help them to better understand what the obstacles are. Why is this? Because as you probably already learned, there is Kaesong and for South Korea, so I did ask whether they would like to internationalize Kaesong, but the clear answer was that there is no plans to internationalize Kaesong, and Kaesong shall be a symbol of unification and only dedicated towards a South Korean investment, which is on hold at the moment as far as I understand. So therefore, they would like to encourage Germans to set up a special economic zone, industrial zone in the city of Hamhung, respectively Hungnam. That zone shall be developed by Germany and obviously cater German investors. At the moment it's a rice paddy, basically nothing there, and I was quite clear that Germany would not be in a position due to sanctions and all sorts of circumstances to set up such a special economic zone, and we reiterated this many times. So obviously, to repeat myself, we thought there's a great need to come with a business delegation to through a business perspective help them better understand where they are standing and what is needed. So again, 20 business people about representing infrastructure, textile and garment, agriculture, banking and finance, and production as such. What happened is we had some official meetings in Pyongyang and did go to Hamhung, met with the head of the People's Committee and all those people up there. We were having that idea of setting up that, signing an MOU, which shall lead to a joint economic committee. That might sound very sophisticated, but it's really there to enter into an exchange with North Korea. Now, I set up like a 70, like a plan of like 17 items, 17, which is like all sorts of exchange and all that. Just what needs to be done in terms of enhancing our exchange, and just how to engage ourselves and educate them what is needed, what needs to be done. Anyhow, so the MOU was signed, and which is really there to start some sort of exchange and cooperation. And again, we are planning a joint economic committee. We got business representatives, which is about 8 to 10 from the German end. There is no response from North Korea so far in terms of their representatives. Well, we do know the co-chairman shall be a vice minister of the Ministry of Foreign Economic Relations or whatever. So Mr. Ri, I think. And so this is done. So now we are awaiting committee members basically, and we did try to encourage them to get some business representatives in terms of state-owned companies and all that. So let's see what they are coming up with. That committee shall meet once per annum, rotating between North Korea and Germany. If there is any official visit to Germany in 2016, we're hoping to conduct such committee in Germany accordingly. Again, we are in the process of setting up, we are planning working groups as well to focus on agriculture, banking and finance, infrastructure, tourism as well. I think there is potential for tourism, as Mr. Nowak already mentioned, that ski resort and all that sort of thing. And we are including a young leaders exchange, as Mr. Nowak already indicated, in line with the next generation approach. So we did invite 2 young leaders to come, and we were having corporate site visits as well. So we went to different companies which were in poor shape, most of them power shortage and all that. We have some sort of exchange with that Pyongyang cosmetics factory, for instance. So I encouraged the senior manager of that factory to dedicate 2 young leaders to join into our young leaders network. So let's see whether they get back to us. I find it challenging to actually communicate with them, because you meet all sorts of people, you don't get any name card or anything, and all the communication has to go through the party and all that, most of the time without any response. So I did criticize that in a positive or then in a constructive manner. So that makes it very challenging. You know, I mean, like with the head of the People's Committee in Hamburg, it was quite a nice and intense exchange. But obviously, I'm unable to reach out to this gentleman and, you know, follow up on next steps and all that. So this is basically where we are standing. You know, through corporate opinions, helping to change things, little steps, and perhaps this might lead to some sort of cooperation. Well, obviously, it's a bit challenging. I mean, I was positively surprised by the outcome of the delegation. There were a couple of business representatives that are interested in engaging themselves more in North Korea. One gentleman is analyzing an investment which is tricky in terms of a lack of money transfer capacities, you know, and all that. So, and infrastructure as well. Most likely there won't be any investor in any possible investment in Hamhung-Hungnam because of a lack of infrastructure and all that. If there is any feasible engagement, this might be opposite the river in, you know, the Dandong area, basically, you know, giving the proximity to China. We went to that Nampo duck farm, I think, as one of the site visits, and there were two representatives from the like an agricultural company. So we are engaging ourselves in advising them how to increase their efficiency and you know, basically change them to have a higher productivity. Just an example, I think this duck farm can cater 800,000 ducks. At the moment, only 400,000, giving the lack of productivity and just animal feed, basically. So apart from that, we went to the power plant, as Mr. Nowak already indicated. So we're hoping for some more engagement that equipment manufacturers might go there and basically advise them of what would need to be done. Obviously, funding is an issue. There is no, as you already know, there is no existing banking and finance system. So perhaps there's other sources that might be that they could tap, but it's up to them.
Okay,
in a nutshell.
Open to the floor. Yes.